everyone, Happy New Year! I really love to start every gardening year by looking back at everything we accomplished and also get new ideas for the new gardening season. So let's look back at everything we accomplished in 2023. We actually started the year in the UK, in a lovely rural cottage nestled in the English countryside that had the most wonderful views on the sunrise. It was an incredible area and garden. We actually didn't stay there very long, but just enough so that I could start imagining what a cottage garden would be like and start designing it and planting a few things. But we had to leave it behind and we actually moved to France, to this very garden here at the beginning of last year. We arrived at the end of February, and so straight away we were in the midst of the gardening season. It was heartbreaking to leave the UK after nearly 9 years there, and also right in the middle of spring bulb season. But luckily, I managed to save a few along with some David Austin roses that I've had in the gardens for years and settle them all in the new garden. So we were lucky, and in the new garden, we still had some beautiful spring bulbs. One of the first tasks was actually to organize the garden shed and organize all the bits and bobs that we just had to drop on the terrace. So if you're in need for the new year of cleaning and organizing inspiration, this video of me organizing my new garden shed is for you. And it's actually the first garden where I have enough space for all my collection of containers, all my bits and bobs. So I'm really grateful that we have this dedicated space now. And actually, this new garden, although it's a little bit more urban, is also a blank slate of sorts. We do have some wonderful extensive edging that gives us a lot of privacy. I think those edges must have been planted when the house was built about 20 or 25 years ago. They're really thick. It's a mixed edge with some Photinia, some Abelia, some Viburnum. We're lucky it's quite healthy and it gives us that beautiful screen that offsets the plants beautifully. We only had this border with a couple of roses in it, and it was pretty bare. So one of the first makeovers that we did in this garden is to create a mixed rose border. So we started by, clearing the area, removing all that slate, all the landscape fabric, weeding it, adding some compost, and making it a nice area to work with. This was actually a 3-part series on my channel. We started by sowing some seeds very early on so we could get a lot of colors from annuals. We picked a color palette and some beautiful perennials to dot around the border and create that mixed effect with the roses and the companion planting. And I couldn't be happier with how everything turned out. The border was delightful all season long, gave us beautiful color. First with our annuals, with the cosmos, and then our dahlias that we added. We also made some edits throughout the year. We added some grasses for texture and movement. It was really lovely to see come to life and grow. In July, we organized a couple of trips to visit the Loire Valley that's just next door to us to our west. It was absolutely incredible. It is truly the land of castles and gardens, and one of the highlights of the trip for me was to visit Villandry Castle and Gardens, which had the most incredible kitchen garden that I've ever seen. There was a beautiful symmetry in how all the planting and the beds were arranged, so many beautiful vistas and different rooms in the garden. It was incredible. So I highly recommend you check out this trip video if you're thinking of coming to France. The Loire Valley is definitely an area that I would highly recommend you to visit. If you love gardens, castles, delicious wine, a beautiful countryside, there's so much history. And as the summer went on, of course, there was a lot of work in the garden to keep all the containers watered, everything deadheaded, picking flowers, and carrying out all those odd jobs like second sowings to ensure that the gardening season can continue. And one of those tasks for me in the late summer, early fall, was to refresh the plants in the container groupings that I have on the terrace. It's actually a grouping of plants that we can see right when we enter our home and is very next to our dining area. So I really love having here, actually just next to me here now in its Christmas form, but a grouping, an island of plants that, looks good from everywhere in the garden, but mostly that we can enjoy from inside the house. At the beginning of fall, it was time to add a couple of plants to refresh those colors. And I chose this wonderful echinacea with that deep burnt orange color, which was perfect to give that pop of color. I also planted my favorite pair of containers with beautiful amaryllis, some coreopsis, some pansies. The overall color and feel of the containers were my favorite. Fall is actually a great time to add plants into your garden because the soil temperature is still very high, so the roots will have time to form and develop, and also there's typically a lot of rain at this time of year. So that's another good thing for the plants to settle in before winter and then wake up in the spring in their newly planted area. Even though we had a mild autumn, there are still so many tasks that need to be carried out, like cutting edges. I didn't have a power tool yet this year, so that was quite a bit of work to get a little haircut to everything, but I did a good job, I think. I managed to go all around the house. It was a lot of hedging. One of the most exciting jobs in fall is to plant spring bulbs, of course. And I planted a river of daffodils, of scillas. I'd also added some snowdrops in the area. We also have muscari. So I'm hoping we're going to have color from January all the way to April there. I cannot wait to see how it's going to turn out. There are already a lot of daffodils peeking through, so at least I know the daffodils have survived the rains that we've had. And I also, of course, planted in containers. I absolutely love doing so for spring bulbs and for plants in general because it's really easy then to move the containers around and keep changing them to refresh them. You don't have to weed them, and generally it's much easier to control the growing conditions, and I really love that flexibility. One of the last little bits of planting that I did for spring is this cute little shelf with some smaller containers and smaller bulbs. So we're going to have crocus and some smaller daffodils and muscari. I'm also hoping this is going to turn out nicely. Don't forget to tune in come spring because the full reveal, I think, is going to be glorious. One of the last big highlights of the year is, of course, all the Christmas preparations. So getting some arrangements for inside the house with some gift ideas and beautiful pieces of floral decor that you can also give as a gift or use to decorate your own home. So I published a couple of videos on that, and I think some of those arrangements would actually look lovely just for winter in general. So go check it out if you're in need of bringing flowers into your home. So arranging some amaryllis, for example, or some orchids. I think this is something that you can have throughout winter and not necessarily only for Christmas. And of course, I think one of my favorite makeovers this year was this beautiful arrangement for Christmas with 2 beautiful Christmas trees and many evergreen plants like a camellia, a ischemia, some eucalyptus, anything that shines through its foliage, for example, so that it will last through winter. So it was really fun to organize this wonderful grouping of containers and reuse part of the plants that we had in the garden, like beautiful grasses and dogwoods. And one tip that I have for you if you're doing these kind of container plantings is to alternate the size of the container. So have something bigger, medium, and some smaller bits like these really cute containers that are a little bit different, where I also popped some herbs because they stay evergreen, and that's also pretty useful in the kitchen. That way you really have this feeling of cohesiveness, that everything goes together. For next year, I have a couple of projects on my list. One of them is to build a compost bin. Right now we only have something that was already here when we moved in, and it's too small and it's not really functional for my needs. So I want to work on that and also start developing the other areas of the garden. I never showed you the front garden or the side garden. It's a bit less exciting, and I use these mostly as storage for now. Something else that I've neglected are my climbing roses, and I'm thinking I might train them around the doorways, the window openings, or maybe get an archway so that, you know, we could highlight a little bit more the entry to the garden and have the terrace feel protected. I've also been toying with the idea of creating another border to mirror the border that we created earlier this year to balance a little bit both sides of the terrace. Ever since we visited Villandry Castle and Gardens with this beautiful kitchen garden, I've been meaning to add some more vegetable growing space into the garden. Every year, I've always loved growing my own pumpkins, for example, to decorate. So this year we did go to a pumpkin farm, and I could still have my pumpkin moment. We decorated the house, for example, but I've always enjoyed growing those myself. We only have one little square raised bed that was already here when we moved in. There's a rhubarb in it, a rosemary, and a couple of other aromatic herbs. but I'm thinking we could get more raised beds and maybe move this one because it's a little bit in the way of, accessing the garden with my cart. And that's a lot of projects. So I hope I'll get to some of these, on top of keeping the garden maintained and always planted seasonally, which I love to do. So we'll see what we can tackle next year. Thank you so much for watching this video and for your support on the channel. We actually reached an amazing milestone this year with 1 million views and over 9,000 subscribers. I'm really thankful to every one of you for being here, for watching the videos, for liking, commenting, and sharing them. It really means a lot to me, and I'm so glad you're here and that you enjoy gardening with me, and I hope you'll stay for 2024 and don't hesitate to drop any ideas of projects or videos you'd like to see in the comments. I am currently planning the new year, so it will really help me to know what you want to see. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye!